This way of thinking of surrender and recovery really, really struck me because the type of surrender that happens in Game of Thrones is so massively different than the type of surrender and recovery. And in fact, the surrender we do in recovery actually leads to victory. Hi, I'm Barb Nangle. I want to welcome you to my podcast, Fragmented to Whole: Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery, where I help people heal their emotional, psychological, and spiritual wounds and make deep, lasting changes in their lives. I'm the founder and CEO of Higher Power Coaching and Consulting, LLC, where I coach people on how to develop healthy boundaries. On this podcast, I share my experience, strength, and hope from recovery. I don't support or endorse any particular 12-step recovery fellowship, and I don't claim to speak for any particular 12-step fellowship. I also don't believe that 12-step recovery is the only way to recover. You might need additional help. My hope is that you'll find my words concretely helpful in improving your life, whether you're in recovery or not. This is episode 149, How Surrender Leads to Victory, Not Loss. Surrender doesn't mean you lose. I heard somebody talking about this the other day, either in a meeting or on a podcast. They said that when they got into recovery, there was no fucking way they were going to surrender anything. Because when they came up, surrendering meant you lose. You've agreed to lose, and you have to deal with all of the shame and humiliation that comes with losing, on top of the fact of actually losing whatever it is you were fighting for. I was blown away when I heard that because it never occurred to me that the idea of surrendering that I learned and became able to do in recovery was anything like the surrender that happens in battle, where you abdicate to the winner. I think because I have been watching Game of Thrones for the past few months. We just finished season 6, by the way, and there's so much battling going on in that show that this way of thinking of surrender and recovery really, really struck me because the type of surrender that happens in Game of Thrones is so massively different than the type of surrender and recovery. And in fact, the surrender we do in recovery actually leads to victory. Before I say more about that, I want to share a definition I looked up. I just Googled surrender definition, and the first one that popped up was this: cease resistance to an enemy or opponent and submit to their authority. And that is not at all what I experienced when I learned to surrender. I got to be happy, joyous, and free. I got to make choices in my life in areas where I didn't even believe I had choices and didn't believe I was making choices. And this led me to have peace and serenity most of the time. And when I don't, I got tools for how to manage the ups and downs of life so that I can get back to peace and serenity. So here are some of the things that I surrendered as a result of recovery. I surrendered my addiction to chaos, dysfunction, and drama. I surrendered my sense of urgency 24/7, 365 days a year for decades. I surrendered my very strong compulsion to fix, rescue, and save others, to bend over backwards and be super accommodating of other people. Then to be absolutely fucking drained physically, emotionally, and mentally. I surrendered my impulse to control other people and the world. I surrendered my need to live into the wreckage of the future, where I would catastrophize about every shitty thing that could possibly happen. I surrendered my need to have conversations in my head with people about how shitty they were going to treat me. And I surrendered the emotional impact of the horrible things they said to me in my head. And I surrendered carrying around that conversation and the emotional impact it had into the world with me and into the relationships I had with those people. I surrendered my compulsion for other people's control, my compulsion for food, drugs, alcohol, the desire to determine what other people thought of me. I surrendered the need to numb myself. I surrendered dishonesty, self-centeredness, self-hatred. I surrendered the need to self-sabotage and abandon myself. I surrendered my decades-long pattern of chasing people, especially friendships, and dysfunctional romantic relationships. I surrendered my will and my life over to the care of God. I surrendered my negative thought loops, the need to manipulate and manage my image. I surrendered the need to have an answer for everything. I surrendered my need to be right, my people-pleasing ways, my rigid self-sufficiency, my inability to be authentic and vulnerable with others, my intolerance of people in the world. I surrendered physical tension everywhere in my body for decades. I surrendered my inability to admit when I was wrong, my desire to isolate, to fend off the world. I surrendered trying to make shit come out the way I wanted it to. I surrendered the fight against what is, my fight against reality. So in that way, the surrender I did in recovery is the same as the kind of surrender in Game of Thrones. I gave up the battle. But what I got was not walking away with my tail between my legs and having some asshole queen or king rule my life. I surrendered to the perfect rhythm and flow of life, to the divine right order of the universe. Instead of deciding that I knew what was best, I gave up the fight to make things come out the way I wanted them to. And that feels like victory to me. I was recently reminded by a friend that when I first started recovery, I didn't feel lovable. I almost can't believe that I used to feel that way, and that I kind of forgot something so profound, because I truly love myself now. And I want that for everybody. If you don't love yourself, there's literally nothing that can make up for that. I created something exclusively for my private clients, since many of them don't love themselves. And I've now opened up my private vault to share it with up to 10 people individually. It's called the Self-Love Sprint. You'll grow to love yourself and truly feel worthy, so you can stop saying yes when you really want to say no, stop neglecting yourself and putting everyone else first, stop saying all kinds of nasty shit to yourself. That is not what people who love themselves and feel deserving do. You'll stop being afraid that others will think that you're selfish for taking time to care for yourself. This is also for you if you don't really know who you are because you've always been such a fucking chameleon. Go to higherpowercc.com/love sprint. Remember, I'm only offering 10 of these, so don't wait. If you like this podcast, and I'm guessing you did or you wouldn't still be listening, then you're gonna love the other things I have to offer. If you'd love pre-release podcast scripts and episodes before anyone else gets them, or if you'd love access to content from my private vault that I developed exclusively for my private clients, which is like having a work session with me without me actually being there, go to patreon.com/higherpowercoaching. There are 3 tiers ranging from as low as $4 up to $24 a month. You'll also love my weekly newsletter, Friday Fragments, which has content very similar to the podcast. You can check it out at fridayfragments.news. That's fridayfragments.news. Please like and subscribe to my podcast on your favorite podcast outlet. I'd also love it if you'd leave a review, which you can do either in the show notes or on Apple Podcasts. It really helps other people find my podcast so they can get the benefits you've gotten from listening. If someone came to mind when you listened to this particular episode, please share it with them. And my favorite place to hang out on social media is Instagram. I'm at Higher Power Coaching. Please DM me there. I'd love to hear what you got from this episode. I run group and private coaching programs on building healthy boundaries. Whether you need help with boundaries in your personal, professional, or romantic life, I can help. Head on over to barbchat.net, where you can hop onto my calendar for a free 30-minute Better Boundaries consultation. My ideal client is someone who is ripe for change. If that's you, I would love to work with you. My goal with all my work is to help you make lasting changes in your life like I've made deep, lasting changes in my life. Remember, it's never too late to recover. No one is beyond hope, and healing is possible. Thanks for listening.